Evening, everyone. It is now 5:31, and I would like to call this meeting to order. If everyone can please join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, welcome to the board study session. Today is September 9th, and I would like to do roll call. Trustee Ho? Here. Trustee Tran? Here. Trustee Proctor? Here. Trustee Kim? Here. And I am also here. And can I get a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
Motion to approve.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any public statements related to agenda items, please limit statements to 3 minutes. And now we will turn this meeting over to our department. Yes, ready to go.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you, all of you, for having us here tonight to discuss this program that we are presenting to you. My name is Corey Call. I'm the Chief of Police in Foster City, and we should introduce ourselves.
Sure, my name is Ed Barberini. I am the Chief of Police in San Mateo.
I'm Kelly O'Keefe. I'm the Police Technical Services Administrator for San Mateo Police Department.
And I'm Mark Lee, and I'm a captain here with Foster City PD.
So we're here today to discuss the proposed school security camera program aimed at utilizing existing security cameras at all of the district schools. Before we get into the slides, we know security cameras, one of the primary reasons for implementing these cameras is as a deterrent. Outside of being a deterrent, when things do happen, they're commonly used to help us investigate. Here we are talking about utilizing these cameras for real-time activities to help us respond appropriately and efficiently when things are happening as they happen. This will be a joint effort between San Mateo Police Department and the Foster City Police Department. The goals of the program: expedited and efficient emergency service response. And this would be from first responders to include police departments, fire departments, and medical response. This would help direct personnel into the areas in and around school property. Also enhance partnerships between law enforcement and school officials to include improved coordination to achieve positive outcomes during critical incidents. So when something is happening at a school, it's not potentially, it might not just be us who are taking part in responding to this. If time allows, activity allows, we will be reaching out to designated school staff to help us in our response. Nobody knows these schools better than the people that work there and the district members who oversee these properties. So if time and circumstance allows, we will be looking for opportunities to work with school staff. At the same time, when we've got to act, we will act, make our best efforts to respond appropriately. Timely dissemination of reliable, up-to-date information to first responders, stakeholders, and community members. So this, again, depending on circumstances, this may not just be aimed at disseminating information to first responders, but also including school staff, parents, community members who live around the school properties. It's just all based on the circumstance, but we will be looking for opportunities to inform as many people as possible, especially if there are threats in and around school properties. Prompt identification of threats to students, staff, and coordinated actions to ensure safety. So again, depending on if it is a threat situation, informing everybody who is in the vicinity of what that threat is, possibly descriptors, anything that would help anybody in the area understand what to do and what not to do. And lastly, on the goals, and generally an assurance for all students, school staff, and parents, guardians, that a plan does exist to bring services into the scene during an emergency or critical incident as quickly and as efficiently as is possible. While it may not be a specific plan, we can say specifically we do have these tools available to us in the cameras to help us with the best response to handle whatever situation is happening at the time. And we think that's important for people to know. We have this tool and we are building a program and a response around that tool. Talking about police access. We've talked about that. Community advisement. We are looking to the district to best determine how to inform the school community of the implementation of this school security camera program if it is adopted. And we will participate however you see fit. And we will remain, both of our agencies will remain available to discuss this program with any school personnel and any community member during any event that you see appropriate. So we're available as you see fit. Talking about how police will access the real-time video. We will be provided with portal access to your program to access each camera at each school site. We would simply log in to the portal and select the impacted school and access all the cameras at that school. And San Mateo and Foster City Police Departments will have access to all district schools. So we will have San Mateo's and San Mateo will have Foster City school access as well. Looking at program cost for the school district, there really aren't many costs associated with this up front, but looking at the implementation of the program, we will need to figure out how the response is going to be coordinated. So there may be wayfinding recommendations coming from both police departments to the district as far as options to help guide people in and understanding from whoever's looking at the video and how to guide responding personnel into the scene. As we do this, we would collaborate with the school district and the schools, possibly creating maps, signage, markings, looking at terminology, anything that will help our responders navigate the school campus. And aside from that, from what I've learned, there's no additional equipment, services, licenses required at this time. Program costs for law enforcement, again, minimal when it comes to equipment. For us, it might just be monitors or whatever else we feel is needed on our end to put this program into action. I know San Mateo has a real-time center that this would probably be brought up into. Outside of that, then it would be salary costs for us as we do initial and then regularly scheduled training as we understand and train people to respond throughout the school sites. System capability. Regarding the current camera placement, most schools at this time, cameras are focused on entry/exit points, perimeter locations. Some schools do have some coverage in the interior portions of the schools. And when I say interior, I'm not talking about inside the buildings necessarily. I'm talking about the interior outside spaces within the school site. But many schools do not have much coverage in those interior spaces at this The cameras will provide real-time, precise descriptions before any of law enforcement, medical, fire personnel arrive. But having the ability to have eyes on whatever the situation is allows us to respond with speed, accuracy, and as safely as possible. And I say safely, I speak for the responding units, but also for anybody who's on those school grounds. And then we will continue to adhere to existing practices of maintaining privacy regardless of the technology capabilities. So we will not be utilizing this technology for anything other than the intended purpose, which is safe, efficient, and effective response. Here's one example of, this is Fiesta Gardens School. This is an up-to-date map showing camera locations and field of view for each camera. Some of the fields of view aren't on here, but you'll see some cameras have a 360 field of view, with the field of view being represented in the light green shading. You'll see the camera on the left side of the building. There is actually a field of view would be 180 degrees, with the other 180 not being visible. But that is how the maps look with the camera locations, and that helps us understand what we have to work with. As you can see, most of the cameras are focused on perimeter locations and entry-exit points. So the agreement between our police departments and the school district, the template being proposed is a 2018 agreement between the Broward County Sheriff's Office in Florida and the School Board of Broward County. And they came to this agreement in response and after to the Parkland High School tragedy. Shortly after that incident took place, they worked together and came up with this signed agreement. And they had a really good understanding of what they were looking for, because while Parkland High did have cameras available that they eventually had access to, there was a significant delay that directly impacted the response into the school. So it wasn't real time as they thought.
And that's where they think it went wrong, is because they didn't have the camera live feed?
I can't say that it went wrong. It was when they thought they were tracking a suspect and closing in, the person was already gone. And there was, I believe, a 16 to 20 minute delay. So, and I've confirmed with the cameras at our schools, there is a minute delay, which justifies the real-time designation. When looking at access to non-emergency recorded video, I understand FERPA concerns. So while we acknowledge there may be instances, not intentional, that a video may fall into FERPA, we would report these to the school district, understanding that all recordings will remain as school district property. And police would continue with existing process of requesting video for investigative purposes. So just as we do now, let's say a vandalism occurs on school property. We don't just have access to the video, we put in a formal request asking for that video specifically for this incident, and that would not change. Access to these cameras as part of this program would remain specific to designated reasons as to why we would be requesting that real-time access. So the viewing of this real-time video, so our accessing the system would be limited to specific circumstances as described in the agreement, however that final agreement looks. It would be specific to designated emergencies and critical incidents. Law enforcement, very important, will will not intend to or be authorized to view real-time video for general surveillance or for immigration-related purposes. And designated district personnel will be permitted to access the remote locations from which this real-time video would be accessed by each of our agencies. So if you wanted to have somebody come in and take a look at San Mateo's real-time center, our dispatch center, anytime where we would be accessing this video, or any space where this video would be accessed, you're more than welcome to send in personnel to examine that site. Continuing, so our supervisors, only supervisors and authorized personnel will decide when real-time video may be accessed, and I'm talking specific to each of our agencies with the supervisors and personnel, when real-time video may be accessed, and they would then grant permission to trained and designated staff. So this wouldn't necessarily be available for anybody to view. Wouldn't be available for anybody to say, yes, it's authorized, go. They would have to be trained. They would have to be designated personnel. And who those people might be, that we would have to figure out how that looks. Law enforcement personnel accessing real-time video would be authorized to provide other law enforcement, fire, medical personnel with relevant information. So we're responding to an incident on school grounds. San Mateo's taking a look at the cameras. They would be informing all responding personnel, which could be other police officers, deputies, fire department personnel, or AMR, or whatever medical units are responding to the school. The sharing of that information would be critical. So anybody who is responding in, who is going to directly have a part in our response to an incident would be provided with relevant information. Talking about circumstances that justify our accessing the video. Those incidents may include when a call is received advising of an emergency or critical incident that's occurring on or near school grounds. There could be many examples, but could include violent intruders, abductions, bomb threats, or suspicious packages that rise to a certain level, fires on school grounds, anything that involves a direct threat. Where a district school or other district facility notifies law enforcement of an emergency or critical incident occurring on or around district school property. So this is part of the discussion that we would be having is maybe there are other properties associated with the district. The primary focus is on the schools, but it would be a discussion to see how we both prioritize this response. When law enforcement or a fire safety agency is notified of an emergency or life-threatening condition on or around school property that requires fire and medical response. So it might not be a situation that is directly related to police. Maybe it is a fire department initiated call where it's a fire on school grounds, or it's a medical issue that rises to a certain level. Again, we would have these conversations. And when necessary to protect health and safety of district schools, students, personnel, and other individuals near school grounds. And aside from that, then we're looking at routine maintenance to verify camera system operability. So we would be maybe based on a scheduled or random system, just checking to make sure that the system is operating. We have full access, because we do not want something to happen and then our access isn't working out. So frequent checks would be important. And then there would be training. This would probably be scheduled training, or maybe based on new hires. So we would work that out with the school district, but training would be an ongoing part of this to make sure that we and all of our personnel understand how to interpret the video, guide people in, and for the responding units, how to actually enter the school grounds and respond appropriately. So indemnification just talks about how the district and law enforcement, our agencies remain separate, responsible for the actions of our own respective officers, agents, and employees under this agreement. And each party shall not be deemed agents or servants of the other. Also, a very important piece is the audit capability tied to this program. Law enforcement access and use of this real-time video from the district security cameras would be subject to audit by district personnel. And we may provide district personnel with information regarding our access. So if an incident occurs or we are doing some training with our people and we are accessing real-time video for those purposes, we would be looking at how that reporting to the district might look, just to make sure that there is complete transparency as far as why we are acting in this program and to make sure you understand what we're doing. And then obviously the audit and reporting terms would be detailed in this agreement.
Currently, as the system is set up, when someone accesses the system, is it some type of notification that we get?
It's always after the fact. So both police departments will contact us. Dr. Heredia, Dr. Rubalcaba, and I typically field those calls, but it's not real time. So they'll call us and say, on such and such date at such and such time, we believe that X activity took place in this part of this school. So we work with our tech department to essentially queue up the video, and then we provide that to the police department. But this is different because this is specifically speaking to the potential for real time or sort of in the moment video access.
Right, which will, if it's ever accessed, we will have notification.
Like if someone logs in.
Yes,
there's a
will we
footprint.
get a ping that, oh, someone's in the system?
Yeah, and I would, I'll let our tech people down the road speak for that, but there's always a digital footprint.
Got it, okay.
And we would work out the terms, just looking at possibilities when we have planned activations such as for training. There may be notification in advance of that activation.
We have had cases where we've had close to real time, where we've had situations that San Mateo right away calls and says, a student reported such, and we immediately then authorize them to go in and look at the cameras and see, who is the vehicle, where's the child, what's happening. So as quickly as we get, we immediately share that. It's close to real time, but it's not real time. But yeah, but as soon as we get a call from them, then we'll say, okay, let's open up the opportunity to share.
So that's the end
Has
of
been helpful in
In
that
that
regard.
instance, Dr. Heredia, I believe it was one of the examples is an alleged abduction that
Yes.
happened in front of one of our schools.
Yeah.
where Thankfully, at that school, we had pretty decent sort of like ancillary coverage to the streets that lead around the school. So we were able to, have multiple perspectives of like the path of a vehicle or where a vehicle had gone that morning. And that's not what this meeting is about, but it was just one example.
Yeah.
It wasn't real time, but it was pretty close. It was within a
No, I think Chief covered it. Just from a San Mateo PD perspective, I think that we share the same interests as Foster City. This is a break glass in case of an emergency type of tool for us. We're talking about a potential child abduction. We're talking about an active threat on a campus where where seconds and minutes matter. And not only can we direct first responders to an accurate location. Your campuses are big and they're foreign to a lot of our staff. I mean, some of our officers who are assigned to the schools know them pretty well, but if we were to direct just a regular police officer to a cafeteria or a gymnasium or a particular classroom, they'd have a hard time finding that. So being able to provide direction to get them to the threat as soon as possible is important to us. In addition to that, we're all familiar with the Big Five. And when we're talking about, a lockdown, a shelter in place, an evacuation, and making those decisions, we think we'll be able to make much more well-informed decisions in a timely manner. And should we direct an evacuation, no drill is a comprehensive evacuation drill because you can't predict what the scenario will be, and we want to make sure that we're not having people evacuate towards a threat. So this would provide us with the ability to direct them to evacuate in a safe manner. And then finally, I think Chief Call covered most of it, but unfortunately, I've been part of a couple active shooters in the county, active shooter incidents, and identifying the threat can be a challenging deal. And you don't know whether it's just one or whether there's multiple threats. And it provides for some tense, prolonged moments and some frightening moments. And we're hoping that this would allow us to be able to clearly and quickly identify those threats and make sure that we're not missing or overlooking an additional threat or misidentifying a threat that would put our kids at risk.
Do you have access to the high school live feeds already?
So kudos to your district. Your cameras are awesome, and your investment has been is a very valuable one, even after the fact. The high schools aren't there yet, so we're hopeful that as the high schools engage in a more robust investment in cameras, that we'll reach out to them in the same manner. But right now, to be honest, their cameras wouldn't be a huge value to us because they just don't have the system that you have right now, or the coverage for that matter.
And prior to our implementation of Verkada system-wide, we had numerous different types of cameras that had, very limited capacity. The clarity of the video was, bad to the point of not being able to see anything.
Yeah.
Also just aging equipment that just kind of knocked it out of service. And so, but even in our district now, not every school is the same. So there are some schools with as few as, I think, one has maybe 9 cameras total. Some of our middle schools, they have 27 cameras. So just even with the improvement, every school is sort of unto itself. And, the camera coverage is different depending on the type of school that we have.
And recently, I know we updated each of our school sites' security plans that we have included with our district. I would like to see our district allow the department to kind of look at those in the event that there is a need to for them to access any schools or the emergencies, what the protocols would be. They would understand what our protocols are so that they can help maybe, facilitate, critiquing how we can be at the most efficient, possible during these incidents, if hopefully that none occur, but we should at least make sure that there's no conflicts with what we currently have in place. And if there's anything we can do better, we should be able to identify what they are and figure out how to implement it.
And we have monthly coordination meetings with both San Mateo PD and Foster City PD. Dr. Heredia helps facilitate those meetings, so we'll definitely put it on her plate to work that sort of agenda item into those meetings, so that it would surprise me if they haven't already gone through our, to some extent, but every year we're updating them. So maybe a summary of some of those changes. And then I have Susie, who's chomping at the bit right behind me. He's whispering on that. He's whispering that.
Public information, they're online. Yeah, Susie's over there.
Just to say that I'm glad that you're familiar with our Big Five, as the county supports that. And Dr. Heredia knows that we also have a district-wide safety team, and we'll certainly invite everyone to join that on an occasion as well to see how we can best support each other in keeping students and staff safe. Thank you.
Are you guys
Somebody's phone is blowing up.
Oh, it's over here.
Are you guys able to share, you mentioned, Chief Barberini, you mentioned you've been involved in a few things. Are you able to share like a real life situation where you had live camera like access where it helped you in something?
I can share you 2 instances that I've personally been involved in where I wish I had live camera access. So I was the police chief in San Bruno during the YouTube active shooter. Large campus, multiple buildings. Several challenges where cameras would have helped. Where on the campus is the threat? Cameras would have helped that because we're receiving phone calls where people are trying to describe where to go to a dispatcher who's then relaying that to a police officer. That can be challenging. The description of the threat, we're getting multiple descriptions. We even got some people were claiming it was a male, some people were claiming it was a female, what type of weapon, all that type of thing. Was there only one? Those were things that it took us hours to figure out. And the time is inconvenient. My bigger concern is that that's a pretty nerve-wracking couple of hours because we don't know if there's another threat out there. We don't know if there are people at risk when we're talking, and that didn't involve children. And in the same capacity, when I was up in San Bruno, we had an active shooter at the Tanford End Mall, and it was the same type of thing where we're receiving reports via telephone, where we have resources going several different places, and we're doing the best we can because we have limited information. So in both of those instances, I think, knock on wood, they both worked out fairly well, but I think that we would have been able to be much more efficient. And not the bigger issue, but an additional component to that is the messaging to those that are affected by the incident. We're talking about, one was a shopping mall, the other was a large tech company campus. We didn't really know what to tell people, right? We're telling them we have the information that we have, and we're trying to provide the best direction that we possibly can, but we're not 100% sure that that's the best direction because we're just working with the information that we have. And it took us, the YouTube had a great camera system. Took us about an hour or 2 to kind of get in there and to be able to leverage that camera system. But we all know that these types of incidents, an hour or 2 and they're over. So those are a couple incidents where I wish that I would have had the real-time access to those.
I can also speak. I was actually on the ground. I was part of the SWAT team for both. And there's nothing more infuriating than not having the information that we need. And I was the liaison with San Francisco SWAT. And they were constantly asking me, tell us what we're looking for. And I'm like, I don't know what we're looking for. So just expect the intruder to be there. And even within our own teams, we're like, do you really think the person's here? Are they not here? But we have a responsibility to clear the entire mall. And with that being said, while we weren't breaking things, San Francisco's like, our policy is to go into every store. So they were shattering the glass doors on every single business. And I was like, wow, if we had cameras just to direct us or just even give us like a description of something, we'd have something better. And unfortunately, I'm also one of our active shooter instructors. So as the chiefs mentioned, majority of the incidents occur within less than 5 minutes. So if we have that information and we can get that out to us and not only the public, it'll help direct our response so much faster and get us to where we need to be. So a really good perspective from the command staff level to us on the ground when we're asking dispatcher records, like, you have to give us information, and other people on the channel. It's madness. But with this capability and having that second set of eyes, that's actionable, verifiable intelligence, it would be incredible to have. And both YouTube and Tampa, we were in every single building just so we can tell the employees we checked everything. But I think it could have been fixed.
And I think from a real-time perspective, it's probably at a smaller scale, but in South San Francisco, they had an active shooter in a neighborhood out in the street, and that person was lying in wait, waiting for officers, hiding behind a car, and officers were approaching him. We had a real-time camera capability there, and we told the officer stop because they were walking into what would have essentially been an ambush. And in that instance, the camera saved at least somebody being badly injured, if not killed. So there's nothing, right now we have great capability. And again, I'm kudos to your staff for recognizing the value of investing in a great camera system, because it's a super investigative tool. If we have to investigate a serious crime on campus, whether it's during school hours or after hours or whatever it is, there's no better friend to us than these types of cameras, because it's a starting point. Otherwise, we're just we're blind and we have nowhere to start. But the one area that we could leverage better, both in our schools and in our government buildings, in some other critical infrastructure sites throughout our cities, is that real-time access, because it is, you're not going to need it until you need it.
And it is amazing, especially during a major incident where there are multiple people calling in what's happening, the differing information that is being reported as far as who the suspect or suspects are. When the reporting people are stressed and under pressure and fearing for their own safety and the safety of others, that information being reported to us varies sometimes drastically. So whereas if we have access to cameras and we can potentially put our own eyes on a situation and identify the involved people, that is the best case scenario.
I wanted to ask a question. I was looking at the Broward County agreement that you attached to the documents. It looked like the agreement lasted only from 2019 to 2022, so it expired in 2022. So I guess my questions to you two would be, what time frame are we looking at on our end, and why now are we looking at this? Why were we looking at this in 2019? Yeah.
I can jump in. So I think there's some value in having a limited term on an agreement, because we can come back and reevaluate whether or not it's working and how can we make it better. If we just sign an agreement that with an indeterminate term, it just kind of sits and we don't have the opportunity to improve. We're all busy and we have other things going on. And the answer to your second question, why now, is because you have the capability now that you didn't have before. The camera system that you have set up is an extremely valuable tool that just didn't exist in 2018, 2019. As the superintendent mentioned, the technology at that point wasn't at all what it is today.
And I want to add to that. I don't remember experiencing the threats that we currently are experiencing in schools. We have a lot of active shooter incidences, a lot of crime that's happening, that's physically harming people. So I don't think we have had to worry about, or I don't think it was at the top of our priority list in past times as it is in these current times, in my opinion.
I mean, do you mean our district or just
all of
the world, like in the United States?
No, in the United States, it's a problem in the United States. We have also had some scary moments in our district. So in my opinion, I err on the side of safety versus, and being proactive versus reactive. So in my opinion, it's safety first. So
absolutely. And, I think we can all say that, everyone here, we all care about the safety of our kids and, our district. And I guess for me, the issue is, it's more of a matter of, like I said, why now? And then the second one is really, when I'm looking at these, these points, right, the circumstances justifying, I would say all of them, I completely understand and I think they make a lot of sense. The one that I think for me, if I'm being honest, causes a little bit of discomfort is, the second bullet on the circumstances justifying access to video continued. It says, when necessary to protect the health and safety of district schools, students, personnel, other individuals on or near school grounds. That's very vague, right? When necessary for health and safety. That could be arguably any time. And, I was reading this and I agree with the idea of not having that general surveillance aspect, but it's like, well, when you have a clause like when necessary to protect the health and safety, that seems very broad to me. And so, I think, obviously we don't want anything happening to any of our kids and we don't want that on any of our hands. But I think also for me, I just wanted to make sure that, when you're being able to access students and kids and minors at any time, at any place within the schools, how do we know, right, when it is going to be general surveillance versus, when we have something as big, language as that.
Well, wouldn't the school have to activate you guys first for an emergency purpose? I mean, you
No.
guys,
Well, this agreement is to have real time anytime. It's not for us to give permission, which is what it is
So
now.
we would have access to the portal provided by the district. So if something is happening, we would have immediate access to those cameras.
right, however, you wouldn't have the authority to access it unless an emergency was triggered. Is my, what I'm hearing.
No, they have
I
any,
mean, they do have access, however, what
For
has.
the agreement, we would have circumstances and probably a very narrow scope that we would work within to start.
Okay, which would be only for training purposes, is my understanding. Unless there's an emergency activated.
Exactly. Emergencies, critical incidents, anything that rises to a certain level,
Yeah.
combined with training, system function checks. But we understand, and this is a starting point. This is exactly what we expect to happen, discussions. We're not saying this is how we want it. So we want to work with you to come up with the agreement that we can both work with. And we understand that we may be starting with a very narrow scope, and if there are adjustments, we would make them as we go and as we have further discussions.
I think it would be fair to mention, we did talk about this a few years ago, you and I, so it didn't just start now, it's just.
So I just took it from.
I want to give you credit. It's grown years ago.
We'd be comfortable with more specificity if that's it. And then the other component to that is I think the audit capability is important. So the school has complete oversight over when and who has accessed the portal. So if there is a problem or there's somebody's doing something that they're not supposed to be doing, there is some accountability there. We want that accountability.
Yes.
So I think that's where we're coming from. I will tell you the training component for me is not super critical in my mind, but I don't come from your lens. But I will tell you that the training that we're going to do regarding active threats or active shooter, those types of trainings on campus are going to be when school is not in session. So it's not going to be when there are children present. But we may want to utilize those cameras so we can simulate, hey, this is what we're seeing, this is where the threat is. So I think that's, in my mind, that's where that training component comes in.
So when talking about being specific, the more specific understanding we can account for every situation. So there does need to be, I think we believe, some room to operate that can't be specified in an agreement. However, being as specific as possible only helps us and you, because we don't want to make a mistake. And while we want this program to be implemented for safety, which is above everything, we want to maintain trust at the same time. That is very important. So being as specific as possible, I think, is a benefit to both.
Yeah, just while keeping in mind, as they both mentioned, it's very difficult when people are panicking and trying to provide this information, right? So if a caller, a teacher, or someone's like, there's someone on campus with something in their hand, and if it doesn't meet, like, well, they're not actively shooting or they're not, we can't go. So that little wiggle room, and again, we want to be specific because it helps our officers actually, so but just understand there is a lot of issues when it comes to communication from the public to us.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I think for me, it's just, like you said, I'm glad this is just kind of a work in progress. We're not agreeing on it right now, but I think just how open to interpretation that particular statement is does personally make me uncomfortable. I also wanted to ask, kind of in that same vein, and I don't know if this is even possible, but I was wondering if I could request to remove the Fiesta Gardens map.
Yes.
I think this, for me, it demonstrates a campus's vulnerabilities. So I'd like to ask for it to be stricken from the presentation, from any attachments going forward. I think that just opens up Fiesta Gardens for, it's a map with exactly where all the spots are.
Thank you for bringing that up.
We've heard a lot of discussion of the pros. I think we can all understand what the pros are. I'm wondering if you have anything to say about potential cons.
Yeah, the primary con for me would be misuse.
I'm sorry, what?
Would be misuse of the program or not abiding by the agreement. And that's where the accountability piece comes in. I think the protection there is the audit capability that is available to the district. And so you do have complete oversight. So if there is a con, it's in my mind, it's that, but it also comes with an accountability piece where we would be held accountable for anything that was done in error. I do think that there. I'm kind of excited about this from a relationship perspective because I think that it gives us a reason to get together more frequently and talk about, hey, did we have to employ this program? If so, was it appropriate? Was it not? Could things have been done differently? I think those are productive conversations. I will tell you that from a police chief's perspective, I hope that I never have to employ this program. This is my worst nightmare. I mean, it absolutely is my worst nightmare when I come to work every day. So while we're here and we think it's of value, this isn't something that we're excited to use. This is, like I mentioned before, a break glass in case of an emergency scenario for us.
So maybe this is a question for our tech staff, but in terms of the credentials, is this like each individual person who has access would have their own credentials?
Yeah, I mean, so I can speak to that. I'm
Sure.
very familiar with the Verkada product. That being said, I don't know what your exact contract is. It should be individual credentials.
It is.
I would need that from my people to be CJIS compliant, which is what we're bound to being criminal justice organization. So everyone would have their individual credentials. So you would be tracking the audit by a name. And then just to speak to the audit too, if the audit is similar to the Verkada products that I've seen, it's real time in that the second I access it, I can't get out real quick and it's not going to have my name on there. It's going to be on there. There's no form of notification to say PD's access this alarm. Verkada's in San Mateo, they may be able to make that happen. They've made some other things happen for us that we've needed, but it is real time in that it's happening the instant I open the video.
So Superintendent Ochoa just confirmed that it'll be a digital footprint.
No, I understand that. My question was more, is it like one credential for PD?
Oh, no.
No, I wouldn't feel comfortable with that. I need it to be associated to the employee. I have my own office that I have to run. So if the department comes back, school district comes back and says, I need to know exactly why you access this, I cannot have it be a universal code. And I don't think that would work for you all either.
Go ahead. Obviously like misuse is one potential downside. I'm wondering if you can think of any other downsides to having this, or if that's.
So you're talking about cons, and I won't say that it's a con necessarily, but I think it depends on how you kind of classify it. But more of a concern maybe would be perceptions attached to a program like this. And this would have to be something that we address on the front end before this is probably even deployed. And that has to do with communication to everybody involved. And this is where we say that we would remain available to discuss this and present to whatever groups, during whatever functions you might ask us to join in, because we do want there to be complete transparency and trust tied to this program involving the police department. So we do understand there will be concerns by some people, and we would like the opportunity to have those conversations to address that.
I'm glad you brought that up. I think for me, when I look at the Broward County agreement, right, it happened after the Parkland tragedy. So families and communities and school boards are all going to green light everything, right? And it's different. We are not Florida. We're in the Bay Area, and so there's a lot of different opinions around police and safety and privacy. And so I think starting that conversation early and getting a sense of what the community backing would be really helpful. I wanted to know, are there similar kind of things going on in maybe not necessarily even our county, but the greater Bay Area that you're aware of, like other districts having similar agreements with their police staff?
Not locally. I don't know. Not that I know of.
I would say not that we're aware of, but they're also, again, I'm gonna compliment your district. I don't know that the investment in safety via video camera has been made by a lot of districts, as you guys have, that the investment that's been made here. So there may not be the opportunity yet for those other districts to engage in these types of agreements, but this is a valuable opportunity because of the investment you've already made in the safety of your campus.
Yeah, I just don't know if the technology is even available in other counties, right? Like to have ricotta in our backyard and to maybe be able to access it just by a portal or a link is incredible. But to your first question, I think as Allison and Jane, and I'm sure you guys, our kids go to the school. So to be proactive, but also clearly give or limit access to very specific circumstances is very helpful to me as a parent. And I've had this discussion with my wife, and it was, are you guys being big brother? Are you guys monitoring the kids? And we're like, no, this is, we have ALPR cameras. Nobody has time to just sit there and watch.
Yeah.
And per our agreement and policies, you are not allowed to do that. These are, as Chief Barberini said, this is in the worst emergency possible, which would be our worst day in the school district as parents, right? So
I think it's also important for the public to understand the finite definitions, because on the counter of that, working in dispatch and starting the real-time information center, I've had people with an expectation of surveillance. And I can't offer you that. I can't offer that as a program. And when we're talking about concerns, my other concern would be we don't access it and someone then asks, well, why didn't you? Because I've told all my dispatchers or whoever has access, this is critical incidents only. Something happens to a child and someone gets upset because we didn't access it based on the information we're given. So defining that and communicating to the community is not only important for you, but it's also important for us to be successful in this too.
Absolutely.
So there was a couple comments that you made that one I would like to know is, you mentioned our campuses are big and everybody doesn't know all of our campuses. I'd be more interested to make sure that you guys are spending enough time like getting to know like the physicality of the campuses, and that when you get there, your officers know where things are, like in real presence rather than on video. So, I don't know if that's part of the training that you guys are doing, but if there's a way to get more officers on campus for training purposes, so that if something terrible happened, they know where's the NPR, where's the library, where's the cafeteria, whatever.
Yeah, I think what's meant by that is the more our officers are on campus, the better for us. We love that. Thank you for the invitation.
Not during school.
we love that.
We do have masks.
So the reality is when we do have an active shooter, active threat incident, and I'll go back to the experiences that I've had, we have a couple hundred police officers respond. It's not feasible for all of those. We're going to have officers from multiple cities. We're going to have officers from multiple jurisdictions. We're going to have multiple disciplines, police, fire, medical. It's not feasible for everybody to know or be familiar with that campus. If an officer if that's their particular beat, they're generally going to be familiar with where the cafeteria is, where the gym is, where the schoolyard is. If you tell them to go to classroom A or classroom 12, they're probably going to have to figure that out. So that's what we're talking about is all of the incidents that we're describing here are going to involve mutual aid. Our county cannot respond to an incident like this without mutual aid. No agency in the county is big enough to do that. So we would be directing personnel in from multiple agencies and multiple disciplines. And that's what we're talking about when we're providing orientation or how to respond.
And that's where I believe our standard operating procedures and emergencies will benefit this relationship. Is if we are able to coordinate with our staff at each site, because each site has their own designated plan, because each school site is different, and each of them have a designated personnel who can activate in an event it's necessary. And then that's when I believe the department, should they need to access, they would have a point of contact to be able to facilitate whatever emergency protocols that need to be put in place. We have those manuals and we have those already in place. So that's going to be critical for the departments to identify what that information is, how to get to it, and how to activate it right away.
I'll speak really briefly, Allison. I've been waiting for 23 years for someone to say that. As an instructor, my number one training out of the year is to be at the schools. And it's so hard because the school is always in session and we don't want to interrupt school. The weekends, people are on vacation. So unfortunately, I don't know how San Mateo is, but we don't want the first time an officer to set foot on campus is that time, especially Bowditch, where it's 1970s, these weird round rooms.
Changing now.
It's a little longer now. Yeah.
I'll be very honest. Some principals were very open to having us on campus. Some were like, I don't know if we can do that. It's a really touchy subject. So if we are granted that opportunity where we have dates, we can pre-schedule times for our officers to be on schools to learn about gate codes, which some of the gates don't even work. There's no batteries in the doors, egress, entrances, how to work the cameras. Because I'll give an example, like we've had a bomb threat at Bowditch. There was a suspicious package and the principal came to our command post and we're trying to coordinate a route through the school. And I'm there and I understand the school and our officer's like, all these doors look the same. I've never been here. And our principal is trying to communicate who I don't know where the keys are. So if we can coordinate a mutual training, I know San Mateo does a really good one at different high schools like Sequoia and whatnot, to get your personnel with us, it would only improve, that collaboration and teamwork amongst our county. But it's so difficult to get to schools, and I understand the difficulty.
Not in uniform.
I do want to clarify. I want to be really clear that I don't want a bunch of police officers on campus, ever, really, honestly, because I think it should be in worst case scenario only. But I do want, as a mom and as a school board member, I want to know that you all know the schools that my kids go to and that all of our district school kids go to, and that if something bad happens, I know how to get to the library. I know how to, if someone says a bad guy's in the gym, I want to know that you all know how to get to the gym. And I don't think that requires live video feed. It's just getting to know our campuses. And that leads me just to my second question. As a mom, I want to know that the good guys that are going to get the bad guys are not sitting at a computer watching it on screen. I want to know that you guys are on campus ready to keep our kids safe, and that maybe there's someone in the office that's doing that. So
I can speak to that. So we have a real-time information center. I have a dispatch center. Yeah. This is where I envision this lives. And that's because these are the people that are best versed with the technology. They are quick as can be when needed. A lot of them are mothers, a lot of them are fathers. I think when these types of incidents happen, dispatchers, real-time operators, they are in tuned to technology. It would rarely be an officer in our circumstance that would be monitoring the videos unless it's a light duty officer who's never going to go out there anyways. So,
and then just one point to the orientation of responding officers. Again, we're going to have officers who have never been to that campus respond if there's a critical incident. So that's one area. The other is they may know where the library is, or they may know where the gym is, but the information we learn from the cameras may tell them that the way you normally go to the library or the way you normally go to the gym is no longer a safe route. You have to find a different route. So they would not know that otherwise. So it provides them with, hey, what is the safest way and what's the quickest way to address the threat. And similarly, if we're communicating with our school or our public or our parents, is what is the safest way to remove the kids from that threat? Is it the way they would normally leave campus, or are they going to have to take an alternative route? And that's the orientation piece that I think provides a lot of value with the real-time cameras.
And I think it's also important to mention, just working in a comm center for the last 10 years, when there's an active incident, especially in public or at a mall, the 911 center is inundated with callers who really don't have information. So they're trying to jam through as many phone calls as they can. Sometimes there's 2 dispatchers on staff taking every call. They've been trained, if you get a first person point of view, of course you're going to keep that person on the phone. But most of what we're getting is, sounds like it's in the library. It sounds like it's on the first floor. It sounds like it's in this classroom. So we're working off sound off information, and I'm giving that to the field personnel who are then lost. If I can say, okay, they're saying it sounds like in the library, check the library. No, not in the library. that's huge, right? Because we're not always getting good information, and we're just not able to triage the calls quickly enough to get the caller who does have the good information.
I just want to interject. So I went to your center and I took a tour, and I got to see, thank you for the tour, with Tracy Unga, and I got to see like where it is, like all the computers. It was pretty interesting. I do think that it's our collaboration with joint law enforcement. We meet also with fire monthly and our admin, and we talk about things. We have been able to build the trust, and to, when there are, elevated situations, sometimes we consider them emergencies, we have been able to share access to our cameras, and then we've shut it off. And I think that having a very specific agreement that kind of outlines what the criteria will be for you and who has access would be really helpful. And I can tell you personally, I worked at a high school district. We didn't have the sophisticated cameras because we couldn't afford them. And we did have a student killed in front of my school. And had we, we were on lockdown for probably 7-8 hours because we didn't know where. And we had a student that was, killed in front of the school. And it was a big deal. It was very difficult to respond to, and law enforcement didn't know what to do. And so it was just, so we have this valuable tool, right? And I think if we can navigate a very specific agreement, it could be helpful in an emergency. I do also wonder about the higher level, like federal government coming in and wanting to tap. Like, do we, so that's the piece that I do wonder about, like, what would that make sure that, I know that that's in there, that you put not immigration, but I think that would be really important to specify in great detail.
Yeah, those are things we'd be happy with.
And we consider your records. So I'm not taking any third-party requests for your records at all.
Yeah.
And immigration and federal authorities is just a triple layer that we have policies on top of that. So
I think even other local.
Even
Local agencies, they're not our records, so we wouldn't be able to share them with another.
Absolutely. I mean, we're very bound to the Public Records Act. I would not even want to open that. I would refer them straight to the school.
There's no like student information or any kind of personnel information that you guys would have anyway. I mean, you guys are literally responding to circumstances, not to people specifically. So
You're right. This is a tool.
Yeah.
It's exactly that we are looking to utilize in the right way for the right reasons. Understanding that we all have been through some times, the schools and the police, and the impacts of a misstep with the use of this type of program, which we want no part of.
One of the many paths that the school board in a study session can take is for members of the board to express a preference towards the tempo that a change might happen, things you want us to consider, research you want us to do, establishment of a subcommittee to focus more intently on one or more aspect of the sort of the bigger picture. I can tell you that Dr. Heredia, myself, Joe, CM, Susie, the staff that really works, Dr. Rubalcaba, Ryan, on this type of thing, we haven't touched the proposal. We haven't made any recommendations to it. And speaking as a practitioner, we would have a lot of different components that we would work on to be able to provide. Some of the members of the board have asked, where else is this in place? What's the sort of criteria in place there? What does that access look like? We, as you know, we have 2 lawyers on our board, but we also utilize legal counsel who would want to look at any agreement on any, on any particular topic and give advisement on what kind of language we use in any agreement. We haven't done, so we're really sort of at the beginning of that part of the process. And so for each member of the board in a setting like this, I think one of the positives of having this meeting is being able to hear directly from our 2 chiefs and their perspective, and really give them an opportunity to express the for them, the perspective on why this is important, but also for all of you to have an opportunity to ask them questions, because this is really specific to their career field. And for us, it's an aspect of education, but it's not what we do 24 hours a day. And having said that, through the course of the question and answer and the discussion that happens over the next hour or so, at the end of the meeting, we won't be taking any votes or approving anything, but it's just, we're going to be listening as staff to some of those preferences from the board. And then, as you know, we have meetings coming up, once a month, heading out, and we can follow up on any board direction that that's expressed to us.
I think one thing that I'd be interested in hearing about more is, we have 22 different campuses. A lot of, the schools are not the same, right? A lot of them have sort of their own unique character and student body, family makeup in terms of the demographics. And so I would like to understand both if there is a way to sort of gather feedback from site level staff, not just administration, but like teachers, the people, and potentially students, right? Like how would students feel about this? They're the ones who we are ostensibly trying to protect for the most part, right? I mean, also obviously staff also, but like the focus here has been a lot on, the safety of the people who are on campus. So I would also like to hear just more, if we can find out more of, it doesn't necessarily need to be like a formal survey, but just to understand what is the general feeling about this. To me, civil liberties are very important. I'm not casting any aspersions on any of our police departments, but I think there is, you all were at the meetings yesterday, and I think that there is a very real fear in the community about like immigration enforcement, and we know that they don't always follow the law. So I want to understand, as we evaluate this proposal, but, from all sides, like what are the things that we need to be thinking about that we may not, all have thought about today at this meeting or, leading up to the meeting. So I think I would like a more complete picture of what the sort of pros and cons are.
So, I second what Trustee Trent said, and I also want to bounce off also what Trustee Proctor was saying, like as a mom and as a parent, and I wonder, is there a way that we could create an agreement, right? Like during breaks, during summer, that we allow our schools open for training, like, a practice round, right? For, hey, let's navigate this unknown campus together, right? And, eventually maybe over time being able to hit all 22 campuses, right? And I understand that not everyone who can come to the site at that moment, if something were to happen, would not necessarily be the ones who are trained, but just that practice of like navigating a weird new space, right? And I don't know if that's something that we can look into as well, like a potential partnership, so that we would open our campuses when students are not in session, to better prepare everybody.
So my colleagues know I've been uncharacteristically quiet this meeting, just trying to process.
Did notice.
Yeah, we did. I was like, why is he not asking questions?
I'm not saving up for any, final attack. To be clear. No, I think this is well, first off, I just want to thank Chief Barberini and Chief Call for being here, not just here today, but here with us yesterday and a lot of other meetings we've had. Just having the kind of relationships we have, both departments, having the kind of trust and, I would say even friendships that we built with folks in the department has been very transformative for us when we approach these issues. Having said that, as you can tell by the tone of the questions, we do have a lot of concerns, and also those extend to our parents and the communities that we serve. I wanted to echo what Trustee Trin said, actually even what Trustee Proctor and Trustee Ho said. I do think the live drills is something that I was asked about, unfortunately, 2 weeks ago after we heard about the news coming out of Minnesota. And there has been, we always know we run the drills, we have the lockdowns, we prepare for fires, emergencies, and now unfortunately things like this. But at the same time, a lot of parents had that concern of, but when things actually blow up, as Captain Lee was talking about, what really happens? Like you may have access to cameras, it will take 20 minutes to get online, like how is that actually going to look? And so putting folks at ease, at the same time being mindful of the fact that if you had a SWAT team running through some of these campuses in this climate, that would automatically set that community into panic. And so finding that balance and figuring out the right way to do that. And I think that's what it really comes down to. It's tough to evaluate the proposal because as Trustee Ho pointed out, we don't know what the triggers will be. We don't know the specific language that would grant access. I think there's some that are black and white where everyone in the room would be in agreement. There's others that are much more tricky. So as we get into nuance and details, and even to the technical aspect, knowing whether or not there's going to be logs, how that's going to be accessed, whether or not that's being shared daily, monthly, annually, whether or not the board will have access to that type of information or the public will have access to that type of information, what level of identifying information will be there. If we're given a bunch of people's 9-digit numbers, that means nothing to us. I don't know if that was Captain Lee. I don't know if that was someone stalking their ex's child. And so trying to figure out the right balance there, understanding sensitivities, I think is something we'll have to work down the line. And I think a lot of it will come down to that kind of specific language as we're moving forward. I think the other thing, when Trustee Ho was talking about longevity of the agreement, I don't know if this was built into the Broward one. So my request to the team, that we've asked this in several different ways, is to find more precedents, especially in the last 2 years. One, because the climate has changed. Two, because the technology has changed dramatically. And so knowing that it'd be helpful to have, and not just with school districts, because I do believe, ideally school districts, because there's a lot of sensitivity specifically for about other considerations, but whether you have it with other government buildings. So if we have other type of partnerships where you have access to college campuses, anything like that, I think would be helpful just to kind of see the type of language that's in there. And one thing that came to mind for me specifically is whether or not the school district can unilaterally deny access. Because one thing I will say, I have a tremendous amount of respect and trust for Chief Barberini, for Chief Call. But as we see, for example, at our county level, leadership changes, culture changes. And we don't want to have a standing agreement that keeps that door open if the people behind the controls aren't people that we have the same level of trust and respect for. And so having some ability to revoke access if it comes down to it, or suspend access, is something that I'd be concerned about seeing. And then one thing I will say down the line, I think this also came up in our meetings yesterday, for a lot of individual civilians, they don't know the difference between the two police departments. They don't know whether someone's coming from the county. I will say from my own experience, I used to work at a community college in Los Angeles, and we had an incident, thankfully not a shooter, but another type of security incident. And at one point, I was supposed to address the press, and I had the FBI with me, LA County with me, LAPD with me. I was working on the staff, and I had no idea who was in charge there. I was being told different things by different law enforcement agencies about who was actually running the response. And so in that type of climate, it's confusing. And I think as we alluded to earlier, we know that there are rules about what the federal government can and can't access with local departments. Most of us here don't trust that in this climate, they will necessarily adhere to or respect those rules. And knowing there's not much you could do in that case to particularly stop them if that were to happen, we just want to figure out what our options are. Because if we announce, and I think Trustee Trin's recommendation to go campus by campus is very on point here. If they hear that law enforcement has access to our cameras, and obviously we're talking about a narrow set of circumstances, the worst case scenario, like Captain Lee said, it's going to create a certain panic in certain climates about what that really means, how that's going to be used. To be frank, there will be many parents who assume abuse will be taking place just off the bat. And so to the extent, not that necessarily both chiefs would have to be at 22 meetings, but that we have representatives there to kind of make it very clear the protections we built in as a district, the types of incidents that would trigger this and wouldn't, I think would be helpful. And I think to Trustee Trin's point, we're going to get a wide variety of responses. I think there's a lot of decisions that we make as a board or as leadership in the district. I believe this is one that we're going to have to tread carefully on. Having said that, I think, we all know that this can happen any moment. This is not something that we can spend 3 years working on. This is something that we understand is time sensitive, and we would hate for that next incident to happen while we're in the process of trying to roll this out. And so I think trying to strike that balance in the language, in the timing, in the rollout is something that, again, not much to respond to here. This is a preliminary conversation. But I do want to say, because of the relationship that we built, because of the harsh reality of the threat that we face, and because of the fact that all 5 of us here are parents of students who come up in this district, we very much understand the situations that this would be called upon where it would be necessary. But I think that without addressing those other issues, and I think Chief Call, you did a really great job of kind of articulating that you're fully aware of what those issues are. And I think trying to find that specific language, and hopefully we can find that through some of the other precedents or the partnerships out there, I think it'll help us not only to feel comfortable with this, but also to get our community and others on board. But I just think it's a very complex climate right now, with that balance between both the threat of the worst case scenario being very top of mind and also fear of law enforcement being very top of mind at the same time. It's just a very delicate tightrope we're trying to walk. And I think, again, I appreciate that everyone here came in, I think, acknowledging that reality, very hyper aware of that reality. And I think the board is trying to figure out how to move forward in the correct way that would address those, while also, again, helping us to prepare to have the best response if the worst case scenario were to happen. That's why they make me wait till the end, because I have a lot of words. I did have a question, though, specifically from the example that I had with the FBI and LAPD and other county. I guess what does coordination look like now if something were to happen on our campus? Like, to the extent that, say, something happened at Bowditch, to what extent is San Mateo PD looped in? To what extent is a county looped in? To what extent is any other agency looped in? How does that kind of crisis response look now in terms of establishing chain of command, establishing who's running that site, who's running the response? Because I'm curious, it sounds like San Mateo is further along in terms of having the technology to run a command post like that. Is it run out of San Mateo, even if it's a Foster City incident, or what does that look like currently in terms of coordination?
Yeah, no, it can be run on either. We both have our own, capabilities, and they have more resources than we do, but we don't need all the resources to have a command post. And the reality is all of our officers are trained to respond where they're needed, whether it's in our city or in San Mateo. We have certain understandings that we all come in with. So if we were to go into a San Mateo school, we would be receiving directions, and they may send San Mateo units in as primary. Really, it depends on who gets there first. And depending on the situation, whoever's there, they go, especially if there's a threat on campus.
Yeah, I'll just add that from an incident management perspective, so even, let's say San Mateo got here first and we just, Chief Call would be making the decisions. This is his jurisdiction. It's Foster City he would make the final decisions. A lot of it is based on the type of crime, as far as who has jurisdiction. If we're talking an active shooter on a campus, it belongs to that city, and that city is making the call, unless they would choose to relinquish it, which would only happen in some very small cities. For San Mateo and Foster City, I provide Chief Call with everything that he needed, but he makes the final decision on how those resources are deployed. With child abduction, it's a little bit weird. FBI has some jurisdiction over child abduction, so they may have some influence over those types of things, but that's a very rare instance. We don't see, for example, I use the YouTube example. I had a bunch of federal agencies show up on my command post, and they were there to determine whether it was a terrorist act. And once it wasn't, they left. And I was very relieved when they left. So I think if you're asking about the decision-making process, or who's making the final decisions, if we're talking about a critical incident at a school, if it's in Foster City, it's Chief Call. If it's in San Mateo, it's me. That's who are making. And now it would be silly of us to do that independently. For example, when I had the YouTube or the mall shooting, I had a representative from YouTube or the mall standing right next to me, and I had the fire chief, and I had my city manager, I had other folks there, and I wasn't making these decisions in a vacuum. I had other local officials who were valuable stakeholders in that, and we would discuss that decision-making process. But at no time was there any kind of movement or threat of like a federal agency coming in and taking over. That's just not the process that we would have. Now, the federal agencies do offer some valuable resources. In a mass casualty situation, the FBI is extremely valuable. Their evidence collection team is best in the world. And when they had that incident in Vegas where at that concert, their team came in and provided an invaluable service. However, Las Vegas continued the decision-making processes. So there may be some resources that we reach out to at local, state, and federal levels, but the jurisdiction remains the same. If it's in Foster City, Chief Call's making those decisions.
I'm curious, you talked a little bit earlier about, basically in your view, the major downside being potential misuse and having, accountability measures. I would be curious if both of you can talk about like what that would look like at your various agencies.
Sure, I'm going to turn over to Kelly for a second, but I would just say that we have a lot of sensitive information at the police department, we all do, statewide, and we follow some very specific rules on who can access that information and how we track that. So we are very, very proficient in the auditing process. Every keystroke is accounted for. So maybe there's some examples we can use that would apply to what we do.
Yeah, so like you said, every system we use, our bread and butter is our computer-aided dispatch system, right? And that's where every incident gets filtered through. That's where we access all of the law enforcement data. I get audited. Well, I don't get audited. The department gets audited every 2 years on that information. I need to give a specific reason for every query that they ask me about. So we're versed in that. And that's kind of the way that we operate, regardless of whether I'm going to get a Department of Justice audit or not. Even for, our ALPR systems, we have to give a purpose code for every single query that we do. That is all auditable. So, as you said, everything that we do has an element of accountability to it. If someone were to misuse one of our systems, that's a misdemeanor, right? So we could pursue misdemeanor charges if it's, a law enforcement database. I don't want to speak for my boss here, but if I were to find out that someone was misusing the camera system, I would pursue it with termination.
This is
If
where
not criminal charge, if maybe depending on how.
Yeah, well, so for the Verkada system, I don't think there could
maybe
be a criminal charge associated to that because it's not governed by the Department of Justice. But that trust is integral, and especially with the school district, and especially when it comes to children, just being a mom myself, like I have the same concerns that you have, in that I want it to be auditable and I want us to be subject to your scrutiny to show that we're doing it correctly. And I think that's important.
And when we're looking at audits, we're looking at historical information, things that are already done. And if you discover misuse, then it's too late. It's already been done. So this is where providing every employee who has access to the system with clear policy and expectations, followed up by internal examinations, internal audits, become extremely important to be able to say everybody who has access has a clear understanding of why they are to access this program. So providing that clarity would be very important on the front end of it.
And to that point, I just so people have maybe this doesn't need to be said, but we're not suggesting at all that every police officer or every staff member in the police department have access to these cameras. We're talking about training a select group of individuals and training them in what we're talking about here as far as the sensitivity of accessing these cameras. But it's only those folks who are in positions that would be able to provide that information in real time to those in the field. We are not talking about your average police officer who could just log in at any time and watch camera. We're really talking about a select few that just happen to work in those positions that would be most valuable in accessing these cameras.
And for what it's worth, all of these personnel have extensive background checks, regardless of whether they're sworn or not. Every single one of my dispatchers, every single one of the record staff, every real-time operator has had a thorough background that included a polygraph, an integrity screening, a medical, and a psychological review. So
I think that's good to know, because I was kind of envisioning like situations where, just hypothetical, a kid with a red backpack does something on the way to school. I wouldn't want like an officer turning on the cameras and trying to find this kid with a red backpack on campus and where he might be. And just wanting to make sure that all non-emergency situations go through like the normal protocols of however we do it when we are trying to Solve a crime.
Yes, they call.
Yeah. That would not change.
They call.
And I think that speaks to my fear earlier is I know my staff right now, and they are very much so rule followers to where we need to be precise by what incidents they are, because I don't want them not to access it in fear that they are going to get in trouble or did something wrong. So even if the agreement, and again, I probably should not speak for my chief here, but said specifically active shooters, that would still help me sleep at night, right? If it was specific to that instance, I think we'd be comfortable with that, just because that's kind of our primary concern. That's what we keep coming back to, right?
The other thing you mentioned was where the cameras are now, and that I'm sure for your purposes, you may want them in, you want more cameras or whatever. I think that I would want to like think about that before just rushing to add more cameras for the convenience of your purposes, just because that's not why we have cameras right now. And I would just want it to be more of a discussion than just like.
I think we also have some obligation, we definitely have an obligation to have a certain amount of security at each site, but we also have access to funding that can help purchase equipment if needed for security purposes only for the district. But if the department, say, identify a blind spot that they can recommend, oh, you know what, this will be good, but I think it would ultimately be in the best interest for the for our district to make those decisions ultimately. But we do have access to funding and security technology upgrades if we decide to access it.
Yeah, I just don't want it to be an automatic thing.
And I understand, I appreciate that, thank you. And that is something that we've thought about. And we would not come in with any assumptions or making any demands like that. While we might think it's a good idea, honestly, we'd be thrilled to have access to the existing cameras and start there. That's all we're looking for. What happens as we, proceed forward, that would be a discussion, but no, we understand that. And we wouldn't be coming in making those demands, or I shouldn't even say demands, even present like we should do this. We would be very cautious with that.
And given the number of campuses in San Mateo, we probably wouldn't proactively do that. If you came and asked us, hey, what do you think? We would tell you, but
Right.
we just don't have the capacity to do that. That's not something that wouldn't be we're just happy we're thrilled that you've made the investment that you've made, and we wouldn't be proactively making those suggestions. There's just too many campuses for us.
I know, that's what I'm after, the high school.
I did just want to build on what Trustee Proctor said, though. So I do think that, especially if we do move forward with the idea of having some live drills, and another reason we're bringing that up is we've done so much new construction at some of these sites. Like my daughter used to go to George Hall. First time I went back there after construction, I got spun around because new buildings completely threw me off in terms of how things were laid out. But I do think the recommendations would be helpful. But I think Trustee Proctor's point, it's going to be a lot more thoughtful analysis. But if you are seeing obvious blind spots that Verkada or our own team hasn't seen for some reason, or because of new construction, our existing camera structure isn't optimal, I think that's something that we'd be open to. But at the same time, it is something that we would reevaluate at that time. And I think the Trustee Trent's point, we understand that the cybersecurity protocols are in place, and that the previous incident I described was a cybersecurity that was a potentially terror incident type incident. And what I know from my work in the field is that we have intense trainings, we have all the rules, we have all the login unique IDs, and things still go wrong. We know that someone left their laptop unlocked for 5 minutes, someone walked by, did something. And so I know this is a sensitive request, so I think there's maybe more of a conversation than necessarily a document request, but I would be curious to know the number of breaches or incidents that the department has seen, both departments have seen over the last few years, just to kind of understand how you discover them, what were the consequences, and it can be very high level. But I think to the point about accountability, even if there are, the policy says that someone will be terminated for that type of act, is that what actually took place? Did we find out 3 years later? Did we find out 3 months later? And ultimately, either way, the parents, voters, everyone else are going to come to us and say, why did you share the keys with that department, given their history? And so to the extent that we can show what that history is, what improvements have been made, and show that kind of progress that's in that, if there is anything like that, I do think that'll help. Because I know that, we have had conversations with community members who have a lot of fears and concerns that even if these types of acts happen, those officers or techs or anyone else involved aren't necessarily held to account, same way they would say in the private sector or even some other government agencies. And I think alleviating that concern will go a long way towards helping to address the gaps in trust that we've seen out there.
Fortunately, we haven't had any in my tenure. So past 3 years, unfortunately, now I can't give you a case study for.
No, that'll appease my folks.
Yeah. I will say all of our systems log out after a certain amount of time. The dispatchers and the record staff and anyone who has access to sensitive CJIS information as far as protocol goes are told if they're not at the console, they need to shut it down. And so that's something that we hold pretty firmly in the center. We do regular security trainings through the city on ways to prevent that, but no true breaches. And I don't have a klutz misuse to give you. And I think some of that's just because it would be very, very, very hard right now to get away with, running someone or doing something that's nefarious just with all of the auditing capabilities that we have right now. But we can go back
I
and
mean,
see if there's
they
something.
found like 6,000 LAPD.
Yeah, I mean, we're a smaller agency.
They're not that LAPD.
Yeah.
A little bit smaller.
Yeah, just a little bit smaller. So it's easier to audit. I don't know how. Yeah, I won't get into that. But yeah.
It might have been the sheriff's. I was one of this, but
yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's good that we don't have anything to report.
Yeah, we'll look back and
I've been with the city for almost 6 years now, and I don't have any, not to say we don't make mistakes and do things wrong. That's just not one of them.
Yeah.
That's not good.
I don't think this is good.
Go back over there.
Second time I've had that.
Yeah.
Don't say
The larger school districts will also have their own police departments often.
Yeah.
Their own command structure. And, having been in this profession for close to 30 years, what happens is the school board's responsibility to ultimately establish non-negotiables for the entire organization cannot be handed over in the name of anything, in the name of safety, in the name of equity, in the name of access, because while every category I just listed is essential to having a healthy and productive place for kids to go to school, the school board has to be very specific to the point of what the expectation is. And in this, I'll use a very related example, but like school discipline. We don't spend quite as much time in 2025 as we did in 2020 and 2021, but we were in the middle of some really, really deep boundary setting and rule setting that this board was deeply involved in at the time. And I don't know if you recall, Allison, but in one particular meeting, you said to, I think at the time it was Dennis and Christian, Dennis was still with us in student services. You said there was a school that had one suspension, and you said, this one suspension, I'm still not okay with it. We have to think about what could we have done, because the whole presentation was about restorative practices. And even though it was—
That was me. I
Whoever
remember
you said it to,
I almost cried afterwards.
brought it up.
In the corner.
Brought it up to me
I was
over
like,
and over
why?
again. No, they brought it up to me over and over again over the years because it conveyed, it had a meaning to the staff of, this is really what we're being asked to do. So I think that even though we pointed out police department that's notorious for a lot of really bad behavior that's been documented and things like that, there is still in those bigger districts that have their own forces examples of misuse and examples of misconduct that unfortunately they're not hard to find. You can just Google those examples. I think in the spirit of the conversation we've had here, just giving our board members an opportunity to ask these very, very challenging but very good questions and pose things in a way that our law enforcement partners can hear really the intent and the thought process of the trustees, but also an opportunity for our law enforcement partners to say, hey, we have kids in the school, we're parents too. And, really, it's a lot more complex. But as a staff with Dr. Heredia, Dr. Rabucaba, Joe, Susie, Ryan, and we have an interdisciplinary team that really, each one has a part of school safety, and we're prepared with the board. I feel like I've heard enough so far from the board for us to establish a series of different meetings that we have to do internally, and then to be able to produce some content for the board to review and think through next steps at subsequent meetings. But I also want to pass it back to the board for any additional comments, questions to law enforcement, or just remarks that you might want to make.
Well, I just want to say thank you for coming today and bringing this program forward. It's sad that we have to have these conversations, but I think they're very real, and it's reassuring to know that we have some amazing people who are willing to come in and collaborate with us to make sure that we're all safe here. So I want to just say thank you for that.
I wanted to echo what Trustee Kim said earlier. Thank you for your positive partnership with us and yesterday's event, the Know Your Rights event. And I think it's really meaningful for me and our community to know that, to let our families know, like, you are safe, and this is who we are and this is who we're not. And so I really value you going out of your way to really increase that sense of psychological safety even among our community, and opening this conversation with us tonight too.
I did want to say also, I've been on the board maybe 6 years or so now, and for this whole time, one of my main priorities is just to keep kids safe. And so appreciate all that you do to keep our kids safe. But I also want to recognize that safety is very different for different people. And so maybe in some cases, surveillance cameras make them feel safe, and other cases that doesn't make them feel safe. And so I do appreciate our partnership. And I know I've been on the board while we've had lots of discussions about police presence on campus. And so I just am balancing those kind of conversations while I think about this. And, I think we are an elementary school district. We only go up to 8th grade. These are kids that are going to make mistakes and they're going to do things. And I don't think that they should get in trouble. So I just want to make sure that as we're thinking about this is strictly emergency, like you said, break the glass kind of situations. This is not to watch kids, watch families, get people in trouble. This is really to keep people safe. And so I thank you all for being here and for partnering on this. And I know there's a lot of details to iron out, but it sounds like we're all in agreement of what the ultimate goal is here. So thank you.
Yeah, I just want to echo everything Trustee Proctor said, especially as a person who was on the board for the longest and through some very difficult conversations I know with both departments. I think we're at a place now again where we built a lot of trust, community relationships, and strengthened those ties. But I do think a lot of those concerns remain. We've heard it directly from a lot of those parents, again, especially given what we discussed yesterday and that climate. And so appreciate that mindfulness moving forward. And just again, reiterating what Trustee Trin said, I do want an opportunity to go back out to the community at some point to socialize this, especially given those prior conversations, in partnership in whatever way makes sense with district. And I think the way we roll this out, the way we communicate it, has to acknowledge all of those prior conversations, a lot of the policies that we have in place, a lot of those concerns, and also how we're trying to strike that balance and all the kind of restrictions that I think Chief Call, you mentioned from the very start. This is going to be a very limited scope for specific circumstances, understanding sensitivities. And I think what that looks like is going to mean different things to different people. And we're going to need some time to roll that out. But again, as I said earlier, acknowledging that something could happen, I don't want to put it out there, but we know that these types of things happen all across the country every day. And so to the extent that we can accelerate our process to be prepared for that, we don't want to be caught halfway through when something actually requires this type of assistance.
All right, Joe, can you check online to see if there are any comments, please?
Yes, I'm checking. No public comments at this time.
I think you're on mute.
Oh, hello? Anyone?
Joe?
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you, Joe.
Hello? Sound check? Hmm.
He was right here.
I can hear you, Joe, but I don't think others.
Oh, no. Oh,
Something on the.
It might be the TV.
How about now?
Oh, my bad, the TV.
Oh, it's like not, the volume's not turned up. I thought he has like remote access to the TV.
Okay, I'll walk over there.
Someone is eating dinner.
Oh, what are you having?
Ryan. Hey, Ryan.
You're on the big screen like me.
It's not blurred out.
There are no public comments.
All right, no public comment. Okay, well,
Then whether or
Yeah,
not
we
he's
can't
having
hear
a good dinner.
anyone.
Ryan, are you having a good dinner?
He is eating, yeah.
I'm having a good one.
all right, well,
No worries.
well, thank you for joining us this evening, and with that, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
This is progress. We appreciate this. Go have, seriously, we appreciate this meeting.
That's me.
We all want to go home at this point.
I was like, oh, this is the.
Oh, God. And then you're.
Well, we weren't.